Good morning. How are you today? Today we are going to be painting this beautiful pelican soaring over breaking waves. Here are the colors we will be using. I choose phthalo blue because when I add white to it, it turns turquoise color, but any very dark blue will be a nice backdrop for the water. I mix phthalo blue and alizarin crimson to get that very dark blue. That's optional. If you have the dark blue, use it. Raw umber mixed with the blue will give us almost a black. You may choose to use black instead, and that's fine. White will be needed for all of the foam and yellow for some accents. Optionally, if you have turquoise or teal, that looks really good on the waves, we will mix it with the phthalo blue, the white, and the yellow. But if you have it, use it. Orange is a nice accent for the beak. Some fun accents would be to utilize some of your liquid pearls or any pearlescent type of paint for accents. Your colored acrylic markers sometimes are much more comfortable for you to use when you are fine-tuning areas that you have painted. The color shift by Folk Art is so much fun and adds beautiful accents. If you don't have turquoise, but you have these, use it. And any metallic paint or glitter will be fun. I even like to put a little glue down for my crashing foam at the base of the wave and sprinkle it with white glitter. For your brushes, you will want a flat brush with a flat edge, an angled brush, some sort of a liner brush. I include a link below for these white handle brushes and also for these makeup eyeliner disposable brushes. To get started, take your flat brush and your rock. And I have washed with soap and water my Santorini stone. I get it from a local landscape place and it's outside, so it does need washing and occasionally has stains on it. And I use a sanding block to clean it up. Just sand it. Sanding is also a good tool if you get any paint in a place you don't want and you can't remove it with water and paper towels immediately. You can sand it off. I am going to take my dark blue, put out a little puddle, and my either very dark red or alizarin crimson, and I am going to flat brush and I am going to pull the colors in. Here's the phthalo blue, and I'm going to pick up some of the dark red, and you can see it creates a very beautiful dark color. Now here, as I paint, I'm actually painting with the flat of the brush, and I'm moving in the direction the water will move, which for my case is left to right. And my goal is to get it down on the surface, but leave some spots that are not completely covered. This will kind of give the effect of water breaking on the surface. Little waves, whatever you call them. Just pick up more paint and keep it moving. Okay, so it's natural to want to do this, and you can. I like the effect of the flat brush because it gives me a few more open spots, whatever you're comfortable with. The next phase that we are going to do is to put in the waves. And if you look at waves, they are predominantly an arch if they're a big wave, and that's what we are drawing. So it's almost like a bird's wing, and then there's foam off to the side. So we're going to focus at first on the bird's wing. Depending on the size of your rock, will make a difference for how many of these you put in. In this instance, I did 3 waves. I almost think the wave in the middle is too much with the bird in front of it. So that's a decision you'll have to make for how many waves you're going to add to your rock as we're painting. So here, I am going to add some white and some yellow. And I'm going to pull out some of the phthalo blue. I'm using an angle brush at this point because I like having a tip. Okay, so I'm going to put down some phthalo blue and I'm going to mix in a little bit of white, which turns it a pretty turquoisey color. Then I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to get it to a green. And I'm going to mix it around until it's the color I like. Not everyone is successful with mixing colors, so if you already have a teal or a turquoise, use it. You could enhance it with a little scooch of yellow or a scooch of white. See here, if I pull it out and I put in some yellow, I can take it to a little bit greener, or if I pull it out and add a little bit of white, I can take it brighter. So several options. This is the place where you might like to use your color shift. It's transparent, so you would first put something down that gives the color you want and then add that over top of it. I am going to, like a bird's wing, push up an arch and then kind of pull back around. I'm going to color it in. And now I'm going to work with this color. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it right in the arch here. There, I'm fine. Anything extra I can move around, putting where I want it to be. Here I'm going to add a little white as sunlight hits that arch. And I kind of smooth it in very gently, almost tapping movement. And there you have it. Okay, so I'm going to take my liner brush, can be whichever liner brush you use, and the water is going to kind of be coming in from here. And then it's actually going to move up into the wave, kind of forming a crest. So what I want you to do is take some white and indicate the movement of the water because there will be foam. And so that's what you're doing. And move the water into the wave. It can be going left to right in here. I try not to do super straight lines because the water's always moving and coupling with each other, and there's a lot of activity in the water. So now you could use your liner brush or your angle brush. If I use a liner brush, I'm just going to take a line right along the top here and let it break out to the side. Just like that. That's kind of the crest of the wave. I wash off the white. And directly underneath it, I'm going to take my dark color. And I'm going to stick that directly underneath it. To give that shadow that falls under the break. Then with a clean brush, I come in and I can do some very slight breaks with little tap, tap, taps going downward in certain places to indicate some of the water is falling over the top of this wave. I don't know that you want it everywhere because the big commotion is going to be off to the right. Just tap, 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 just a little bit to indicate. And as it gets more toward the actual break, you can have a little more drama. Just tap, tap, tap. Another thing that you probably want to do, clean your brush off, is take your turquoisey color that you created and actually run it along the top here. Just I'm using my liner just to kind of get it in there. You could take your flat brush and just do a line there. That is going to show up behind the foam as the part of the wave kind of churning over. So here I can take my liner brush and pull it down. I don't have enough color there. This is going to go behind the wave, the foam, but that kind of gives me that effect. And I can, here I actually decided I want to turn this wave in just a little bit more. So I may have to use some yellow and white to get it to override the stuff I just did, but there. Kind of like that. The light's hitting it, so it's good to bounce off a few colors. Now, one of the tools that really helps when you are putting in waves or leaves or anything along that line is a scruffy brush. A very cheap example for this is a chip brush from your local hardware store. So basically I have an old brush really beat up and it's natural bristle, and the bristles are so beat up that they are actually separated. And when I tap into my white, I have color that is going to hit the canvas like I want it to, not all smooth, but all rumply. So that is the advantage of these wonderful messy brushes. Alternatives could be a stencil brush. Okay. You could dance around with a fan brush. Basically, the fan brush, you load the edges and then you just kind of dance it around by moving the direction of the bristles. And that works very nicely. Normally, you're just using one little corner. Okay. Or they have a brush called a rake, and I buy a very fine rake, muff it up a lot. I don't have rakes that are big distances between the, see, it's very tight in there. Okay. All of that works to give you this effect of the foam. Here, I'll show you the stencil brush. Don't get too much paint on your brush. You can always dab it off if it's coming out too heavy. Okay. So as you can see, there's lots of tools to get this done. You find what you're happiest with and stick with that. I really like my junky old brush the best. And I do it over the top to kind of show the water breaking there. I get some water breaking down here too. There's just all sorts of commotion when there's a wave. So I want to kind of build that into my water. This is something that you could paint and be really happy with how it comes out with almost immediately. Others of you are probably going to have to work at it a little bit until you get it where you want it. Doesn't always just come out perfect each time. So be patient with yourself. And we are going to go ahead and do the other wave if you want. I think I'm going to have smaller waves right in this area here, kind of breaking into shore. Sometimes what I do is I have a wave right about in this area, and then this turns into a shoreline with a beach, which is kind of fun. Not this time, but because this wave is so big that I think there needs to be some more action down here, but just lower. And then my bird can fit right into this area here. Let's go ahead and move on to the next wave. Okay, for my next wave, I am going to work with turquoise. And again, you could create that with your blue and your yellow and your white. And I'm going to get a little bit of white and yellow into that. And then I'm going to probably have just a smaller break here, just like we just talked about. Run it. So that's going to be my curve, and this is going to be kind of the area going across and coming down. Not as big as the last one. Get my colors in the arch here, because that's where there's so much excitement. If I get too much color on my brush, I wipe it off. In this case, I have gone so green that I'm actually going to bring it back to a little bit of, well, I really like that. I'm going to bring in a little bit of blue here. And do that. All right, like that. Again, wiping off my brush. Do not be afraid to just tap a lot. And fingers are your friends. If I have paint on the tip of my angle brush and I hold my angle brush flat to the surface and pull it with it flat, I get a nice line without it being too thin. And that gives me a nice working area. I'm going to kind of take that with white and do that along the top as well. And here I've got white on the brush, and I'm just going along the top of the wave. Last time we used a liner to do that, but this is just as effective. And here I'm going to settle the wave down into the movement of the water. There we go. And I've got a little spot on the top that could be breaking, but I'm actually going to push it down with a clean, wet brush, not super wet, dried off, that just kind of moved the paint right back into the wave. Don't forget to take your liner brush and do the little movements of the foam around and into the wave. If you don't like something you've done, you can tap it out with your finger or wet your brush and wipe it off. And to get some water breaking over the top. Just scattered here and there. I can also dance it up above as the wave's kind of splashing. That I might do with my messy brush, but up to you. You can also take your angle brush and get the flat of it with paint on it, dab it off, and then just get to the top of the crest and pull down just a little. Just small movements like what we did over on this side to get the water falling down. And when you're ready, take your crummy brush and tap in the foam. Now, I'm a fast painter, and also I'm going to be editing this, so it's going to look like it's happening really fast. You're going to want to pause your film and do the little steps. That's expected. But if you're a fast painter like me, maybe not. Again, you just gently tap. I've seen some people really hitting it hard and you don't get quite the broken apart look that I'm going for here. I always wash my brushes out in between each step and dry them and lay them flat. So you want to give this a minute to dry, and then we will begin to work on the Pelican. There will be a link for a PDF below where you can print out a set of birds and figure out which one would fit nicely on your rock. There's several sizes, and cut it out. You have a couple choices at that point. You can tape the bird to the rock, take a transfer sheet. This side is gray, so it doesn't have the ink. The dark side has the carbon or the lead, whatever you, and then once it's taped on, you slide this color or this paper underneath and trace it with a pen, and it will transfer the design to your rock. Another option is to take the bird from the sheet, print it, cut it out, and trace around the outside of it. That pleases a lot of people who are used to doing stencil work. You essentially just kind of hold it down and follow the lines, okay? Always when you're using transfer paper or you're applying an object like this, you want to use something that is going to show up against the background. So see, there you can kind of see. This is probably a super easy way to do it because some of you are going to have very dark backgrounds and you can kind of sort it out that way. Alternatively, you can just draw it. And if you look, you have essentially a body. See how that's just almost like an eye shape. And then at the front of the body, you've got this little loop up, and you've got the head that loops around. Then you've got a beak that comes down at an angle into a point. And then you've got two big wings. And really, you can just get the shape and then you can get more drama to them later. When I did the cutout, I didn't bother to get all these feathers coming off because I can draw them in. Okay, so that's essentially how you would draw the pelican. Here you can kind of see it. Again, we've got this kind of like an eye. Then we've got the head coming out and this, a beak and a couple of wings. So go ahead and use whatever technique you want. I've already started tracing, so I'm going to continue to trace this time just because it's super easy and easy to put it back on and keep going. I'm using a white pastel chalk pencil, which is great because it will dissolve into the paint, and what doesn't, I can just wipe off. Chalk is your friend when you're putting down images on your rocks. But you definitely want something that's going to show up against the background, otherwise it's very frustrating. And then you can fill in some of the details to help your eye as you're working on this. So we are going to paint in a dark color. There's black. A lot of people use black, by itself. I like it mixed with some color because it gives it a little more character. So here I'm pulling some black in and maybe add a little brown and add a little blue to it. And that way it's prettier than just black. Okay. And I put it in here. I paint the wing. I'm going to paint the wing and the body black. This is going to help me to do some almost a dry brushing on top to get some coloration, but keep it dense, easy to follow. And a dark base is always a good base. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to work with it more. You might keep the photograph nearby of your bird so you kind of have an idea what you want to do with the feathers as you come to paint the wings. We're going to do a lot more work on that bird than just a base black. It's a good start. So I'm going to get some white out and I'm going to paint, initially just paint my head white so that I get this in here. I can paint the beak white also because any colors that I want to put on top of it, the white will cover up the blue underneath, making it show the colors I choose to do my beak in better than if they were to blend with the blue, which would give me greens and stuff like that. I often take a cutout of the image and just set it on the table right next to where I'm working to help me remember what goes where, what colors I'm putting on, things like that. Okay. So I still have white on my brush from the head. I'm going to actually tap in a little white on the body, just kind of lightening that up a little bit. You might bring out a little bit of your brown and add that to it if you want. But really just the white mixed with the black is creating a pretty gray. It's showing sunlight hitting the bird. See here, if I just touch in tiniest little bit of brown mixed with the white, more white, gives a little color to the bird. One of the things I want to think about as I'm putting this bird above the wave is I want it to stand out. I love my wave. I want my wave to show, but I also want the bird to show. And it's very easy to lose the bird against all this commotion in the background. Also in my wing area, I want to kind of show feathers. So again, while I have my brush loaded with this light mixture, might be fun to kind of put in some feather effects. If I mix like some yellow in with that mix that I did before, it'd be pretty. Remember, if it gets too light, I just put a dark against it to make it the way I want it to be. But here I'm just mixing colors, playing with them. And even though I don't clearly see the feathers on the wing in the photograph, I'm going to have them show on my painting because I want it to stand out. Okay, and I'm going to take a light color, so I'm just going to use white right now, and I'm going to run it along the top of the wing, very thin, getting thicker as I hit closer to the head. And it blended because I had enough moisture on my brush with the dark. It gave me a nice accented wing top, which I kind of consider to be the turned over area on the wing. And I do that on both sides of the wing. Maybe do it a couple times until I'm happy with the width of it. And I can pop in more white. And think of that as light hitting the wing. Lightening my body a little. Now notice I'm doing some pretty broad taps, but then I'm dabbing it with my finger to kind of smudge them in. You can use another brush to dab them. You don't have to get your hands all mucky. Mine are always mucky. Now on the neck, I've got this area under the beak that kind of comes down like that. It's going to literally come up a little and then kind of jut across for the eye and then down to the beak. I've got another little hook in the neck. So I'm kind of mixing my brown and my black here. And this is going to be where it comes from the head and goes down into the neck area. I don't know if you can see that little line I just put right in there. Okay. And I've got in the beak, got kind of a, it's kind of interesting how this works because right now by tracing that beak, it looks really huge. I can always put water around it, but I actually think that I'm pretty close in size. So I'm actually tracing the beak to help myself along here and getting a nice gray here with white and black. And here I'm kind of getting that a little bit better. Really, I do have it too wide. So when I traced around the outside of it, I got it too wide. I could leave that white. It doesn't look terrible. Or I could bring in my blue and I could just kind of fill it in here. Just kind of blend it with the background as if that hadn't happened. I have a little splash of water right here. Well, it kind of hides the wings, so I just kind of dab over it. So there are certain things that I put into the water that are conflicting with my bird, and so I'm painting over them to make my bird stand out a little better. You don't know that till you get the bird on the rock. And I could lighten this area behind it, which would certainly help make the bird stand out. So first, I make sure I have enough white on the head and kind of poke some little feathers out of the head. I love birds showing their little pokey feathers. That just pleases me. Then kind of dab the white on where it's going to be. I'm going to take a mix of yellow and brown, kind of make a area right in here that's kind of a yellow brown for the area where the eye is. I'm going to pick up some yellow. I could pick up some orange and some yellow, mix the two of them. And I'm going to kind of run it along the top of the beak. That gives a nice bright color. And of course, I did kind of a gray out on the bottom of it. I might take my gray and add just a little bit of a yellow hue to it to just pop that against the background a little more, maybe even a little bit of white. And I'm doing just lines as I do it. I could take even my alizarin or violet, whichever you used, and kind of run a couple lines into the beak to indicate separation of top beak, bottom beak. They're kind of a scavenger down here, but they just soar over the water. Go across the Sanibel Bridge, you will just see them soaring along right next to you, looking for food. They're just very cool birds. So I'm just going through and doing a little bit of touch up on my bird. Don't forget to put in an eye. I'm just going to use a straight black for the eye. and just kind of dab that in. Sometimes I put yellow around the black circle to make it pop out a little. Just you're dealing with a very tiny space, so don't get too carried away. If you mix your yellow and blue, you'll get a green. See, I just did a little partial circle on the base of that. So here is the final bird, all resined, nice and shiny. I want to talk to you about a couple of extra things I added in. First off, I went in with a yellow marker and I added some yellow on the top of the head and on the neck. I used some of my Ranger liquid pearls to get some more highlights in here. I basically tapped it on with the liquid pearls and then dabbed it around. I used some of the lighter color Ranger liquid pearls. This is a white opal, and dotted a few pearlescent dots for the waves. And of course I signed it. So don't forget to do all of that. Then I put resin on it. So I hope you enjoyed our lesson today. It was fun for me to have you with me, and I hope you'll join me in future lessons.